Alright guys, I'm back. Hopefully you watched part one of the Ferris wheel OOP intro slash teaser video. And now what I'm going to do is show you how the files are set up and show you a few different ways to accomplish this task. But the main focus is going to be on showing you how, by keeping our Ferris wheel functionality separate from everything else in our application, that we can very easily add Ferris wheels to anything that we are working on. And right here in this example, I have three different Ferris wheels. They're of different sizes, they have different amounts of arms, and they are in different states, meaning this one's playing, this one's paused, and this one's paused. But all of them share similar functionality. So if I click on the center, it toggles the play state of any Ferris wheel, so I can get both these guys running here. And you'll also see that I have buttons here that show you that I can very easily communicate with one of these Ferris wheels. Hit play, and then it spins around. So I have three different Ferris wheels, and they all have different physical properties now. But if we want to create a Ferris wheel of any size with any amount of arms, it's very easy. So I want to focus on how easy it is now to create a Ferris wheel, and we don't necessarily have to understand how the Ferris wheel works. Okay, that's another great benefit. So what I want to do is just show you first the file setup here. We have our index.fla, which is our main file. That exports index.swift. And you'll see that next to our index.fla, we have a com folder. And then inside of there, we have Codobyte. That folder is named Codobyte because the man who started building these classes and built them about 95% is Cor Van Doren of Codobyte, and he did an awesome job, so it only makes sense that his classes are inside his package there. Alright, and then we have main.as, which is going to be the document class for my index file. Everything that's inside of main.as is similar to what you would normally put on frame 1 of a Flash timeline. Switching over back to Flash, I want to show you that index.fla right now in its timeline has very little. All right, it has some graphical assets for the graphical user interface, and then there's also some actions here which are just some comments. So let me just fire those open real quick, and all you can see is it's just some commented code about who created this. So we're just going to kill that, and you'll see that we also have some library assets here where we have our arm, we have our pivot point, which we really don't need, and we have our bucket. And there's some components that we're using for the graphical user interface. But the main meat of this is going to be inside of main.as, which is our FLA's document class. So when I'm working inside of index.fla, if I go to the properties panel, you'll see that this document uses main as its document class. All right? Because in the same folder as my FLA, I have that file called main.as. And we'll just close that guy there. And now let's look at main.as. Now, what's in your document class is usually just the code that you need to get your application up and running. In this instance, my application just has a few Ferris wheels spinning around. So at the beginning of the package, we're importing all of the classes inside of the Codobyte folder, and then also some basic stuff that we need because we're dealing with objects in the display list, and we're also firing native Flash events. And our public class here is going to extend a movie clip. It could be sprite. Some people will argue either way. Let's not get into it right now. And you'll see here that I have two public variables, fwheel1 and fwheel2. And these things are both going to be Ferris wheel objects. Okay? And Ferris wheels look like this. So inside of a separate AS file, there's all the code needed to generate a Ferris wheel. I'm not going to get into everything line by line here. It'll take me 45 minutes. I want to show you that it's very easy to build a Ferris wheel without maybe understanding everything inside of here. Just like it's very easy to use tween light without understanding exactly every line of code that makes it run. So inside of our constructor function, all we have is a simple event listener for the added to stage event. What that means is that no other code is going to run until this object is actually instantiated on the display list. All right, and if you want a really clear understanding of that, I'm going to link up to Emmanuel's site here, and she has a great article here, Understand Added to Stage Event. Okay, And we'll just switch back over to Flash so you can learn more about that. And once our object is added to the stage, we're going to call a create Ferris wheels method. And down here we have create Ferris wheels. So to create a new Ferris wheel, I'm just going to do it like I would create maybe a new movie clip or a new bitmap or a new tween light. And I'm just going to say fwheel1, which is a variable that we declared earlier, equals new Ferris wheel. And look at that code completion we have there. And you'll see that it wants to know how many arms we're going to have, and that's an unsigned integer. So let's just say we're going to have 6 arms in this Ferris wheel. Once we create this object, we also want to add it to the display list. So I'm going to say add child, and we'll say fwheel1. All right, the next time I test, boom, there I go. I have a Ferris wheel, and it does indeed have 6 arms. If I click here, we can count them all coming into view. But you'll notice that the X and Y values of this Ferris wheel are 0, 0, because I haven't told them to be anything else. So I can just say, hey, you know what? Let's change this to have maybe an X of 120 and a Y of 150. So that's fine. Watch this little paste job. And again, you always have to save before you do any testing. So there we have now our 6 arms on our Ferris wheel. You may say, oh, well, it's a little bit big for a Ferris wheel. That's okay. I can change the X scale and Y scale just like I can any other display object. Let's just paste that in there. I'll do a quick little code format. We'll save, and I will test. And now I have a nice, cute little Ferris wheel. All right, so nothing here is really too scary. I got a Ferris wheel on the stage. I told it how big it should be and where it should be, just like I would any old movie clip. If I want to add another Ferris wheel, I could do something like this. Watch how fast I type. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. There it is. Oh, let me clean that up for you. And let's do that. And you'll see now that I have fwheel2. Again, at the top of this file, I already declared these public variables. And fwheel2 is going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to have an scale Y of 0.8, and it's going to have different X and Y values nicely. And we'll test this out. And then now you see I have my big Ferris wheel, but it behaves just like the small Ferris wheel. Now we have this cool little toggle button here, and that's it. Now, if I want to talk to any Ferris wheel and tell it what it can do, I can tell it to play and stop, because a Ferris wheel has those publicly available methods. So I already have those buttons on the stage in index.fla. We have something here called my play button. Let's go to my timeline here. The GUI is locked, thank you. And this button here is called play, and just trust me, this one here is called stop. So inside of my main file, if I want to control Ferris wheel 1, by default, you'll see that both of these Ferris wheels have stopped. But once I've created Ferris wheel 1, I can also say, hey, you know what? fwheel1 dot play. Very simple to understand method there. I'll save this, test the movie, and you'll see that the first Ferris wheel is spinning or playing by default. Very cool. And if I want to hook up those buttons, I could do that very easily. I'm just gonna scroll down a little bit, and in the beginning here, I'm just going to say, once I create my Ferris wheels in my init function, I may also tell those buttons to call various event listeners. And just scrolling on down, I can tell that stop Ferris 1 function to do something like this. I'll just paste in the code. There we go. So we have 2 new event listener functions that will tell the first Ferris wheel to play and also to stop. So I'll save that and test, and now you'll see we will stop and then we will play. And again, there's my Ferris wheel 2. All right, so I can very easily create a Ferris wheel with any number of arms. I can make it any size I want, and I can also tell it to play or to stop. Now in the next section, we're going to be talking a little bit about how the Ferris wheel AS file is set up, and we're going to show you my way of doing it, as well as the original author, Cor Van Doren's way of setting it up, which was fairly advanced. So right around the corner. Alright folks, we're now going to do a very quick drive-by of our Ferris wheel AS file. And now this is the literal blueprint for how a Ferris wheel object is created and all of its different properties and all of its methods, what it can do. And mostly this Ferris wheel can spin. So very quickly, every Ferris wheel is going to be keeping track of its rotating state, whether it's true or false. The amount of arms is going to tell us how many arms it's going to have. Aha. A-arms is an array that's going to store all of our arms so that we can loop through them and adjust the rotation of the buckets. Remember our AS3 code challenge. And then we also have a start-stop button, which is going to allow us to toggle the play state of every Ferris wheel by clicking on the center of it. Now, inside of our constructor, we're expecting an argument for arms. We tell each Ferris wheel when it's created how many arms it wants to have. If we don't pass in a valid number, we're going to just end that constructor right there and nothing's going to happen. But once we know how many arms they want, then we'll store that in amount of arms. And then we're going to add our event listener added to stage so that once this object is added to the display list, we can then run the init code that we need. Inside of init, we're removing that event listener, and by default, I'm telling each Ferris wheel that its is rotating property will be false. I thought about this for a while and just sort of figured, you know what, 50-50 doesn't make a difference to me really, but I've decided that if we want a Ferris wheel to play, we'll tell it to play. And then we call our create arms. Okay, create arms is going to figure, based on how many arms that we have, it's going to create a new arm, rotate it properly, add it to our Ferris wheel, and make it look nice. So here we have our array that's going to store each of our arms. Rotated position takes care of making sure that each arm is rotated with equal space in between. So if I have 6 arms, that means 360 divided by 6 is going to give me 60 degrees. So there's going to be 60 degrees of space in between each arm. And here we have a loop that says, okay, based on the number of arms, let's now create all of them. You'll see here that we're creating a new arm. And what is an arm? Well, an arm is this guy right here. Each arm inside the Ferris wheel is its own separate object. And we'll look at that in a little bit. And we're going to tell each arm once it's created to have a certain rotation based on the amount of degrees that we're rotating times the iterator that we're using in our loop. And we're also going to set the arm X and Y to 0 so it's in the center. And then we're going to store that arm or reference to it in our arms array so that we can loop through that array and tell each arm to tell its bucket to rotate the proper amount. And lastly, we add each arm to the Ferris wheel. Once we're done creating the arms, we'll create a toggle button. And here we just have some graphics API code for drawing a circle in the center. And we're giving it a event listener for mouse event click, where we'll toggle the start and stop state. And we'll also add that to our Ferris wheel, obviously. Toggle start and stop just takes care of changing is rotating. If it's true, then it sets it to false. If it was false, it will set it to true. And then based on that new value, we will call the Ferris wheel's play or stop methods. Play or stop methods are in charge of setting is rotating to true. And then also we're going to be setting an enter frame event that will tell this Ferris wheel to rotate. All right, so rotate is going to be called over and over again. What's rotate? Yeah, I know, I went through it really quick. I went by it on purpose. Here we have rotate. And what it does is it literally loops through the arms array that we have, and it tells each arm to call its rotate arm method. Okay, so to make this Ferris wheel spin at the frame rate of our movie, whether it's 30 or 40 frames per second, it's telling each of our 6 arms to tell its bucket to rotate the proper amount. So inside of arm AS, we have a method for rotate arm, which bounces over to rotate, where the rotation of the bucket just gets, the rotation value gets increased, and then we're also telling the bucket to subtract its rotation. So the arm itself is rotating, and then the bucket is rotating counter to that amount. And again, you can look at the AS3 code challenge if you want to know exactly how this works here. All right, so pretty much all the arm does, again, is take care of its rotation and its bucket's rotation. So back in Ferris wheel AS, another quick little, let's just get rid of the timeline here, I'm sorry. We really just have a number of functions, or methods if you will, for creating a Ferris wheel, and then also for communicating with it and telling it to start or stop. Again, my buttons in my main AS file call directly this public function called play, which makes sure that is rotating is going to be set to true, and then it adds that enter frame. If I call the stop method from anywhere else, it's going to set is rotating to false, and it's going to remove that enter frame. If the Ferris wheel is spinning and somebody clicks on the toggle button, it's going to say, hey, is rotating was true, let's set it to false, and since it's now false, we're going to say stop. All right, so again, all of this is inside of this one class file here. So that means that my main AS file, all the stuff that is imperative for just getting my application running, isn't cluttered with all the logic and all the constructor features of a Ferris wheel. All I need to do inside of here is say, hey, Ferris wheel, I want to create you, and I'm going to give you 6 arms. I'm going to tell you how big you should be, where you should go, whether or not you should play, and then I'm adding you to the stage. If I want to communicate with that Ferris wheel, I just need to tell that Ferris wheel to play. So again, by using OOP, we can keep all of our functionality that's specific to a Ferris wheel in the Ferris wheel class. All the functionality that's specific to my arm is inside of the arm AS file. All right, folks, in wrapping up, I want to really just reiterate that everything I've been showing you as far as the structure of these files, the creation of the Ferris wheel AS and arm AS and the main AS, all this was created by Cor Van Doren of Codobyte. He took a little personal challenge of mine to earn himself a Really Green Club Green Stop membership, and he did a ton of work getting this stuff together. So I want to just applaud him and congratulate him and thank him profusely for giving me this great set of files to work with. Now, also, when I got his original files, he did it in a way that was just slightly different. Again, what I've been showing you here, I made maybe 5% of the total sort of tweaks to this deal. I shifted some stuff around and made some things a little bit simpler. So in all fairness, I want to now show you his files and show you how he approached it from the get-go with my very bare minimum requirements. All right, so let's get into his files. All right, guys, now I want to look at Cor Van Doren's original files, and here the main difference in his main file is that instead of using the simple way that I chose to just say, you know, F wheel 1 equals new Ferris wheel, give it 6 arms, and done, he approached this in a manner that was suited to create lots of Ferris wheels with many different features and to do it, you know, fairly easily. So here, he's setting up a whole bunch of different arrays to keep track of how many arms each Ferris wheel should have, how big it should be, where it should go, and then he also has an array of Ferris wheels that stores all the Ferris wheels inside of it. And so here, inside of the init function, you'll see arms per Ferris wheel is an array, and it has the values 6 and 4, meaning that the first Ferris wheel will have 6 arms, the second Ferris wheel will have 4. The first Ferris wheel will have a radius of 140, and the second Ferris wheel will have a radius of 240. All right, so when I go to test this movie out, you'll see those are the 2 different arrays. Sorry, the 2 different Ferris wheels based on all the data in these various arrays. His create Ferris wheels function looped through all of those arrays and based on the various properties, created new Ferris wheels, set the scale based on the radius, set the X position based on what we had in the AXPOS Ferris wheel array, and so on and so forth. Now, this was great, but I just didn't want to have to tell you guys, oh, in order to create a Ferris wheel, you got to build 4 different arrays. You know, this might work better in a Ferris wheel manager or a Ferris wheel factory type of class, okay? But again, there's nothing wrong with this. We get the same end result, and it's fairly robust. Where I made the majority of changes to the basic structure is that in his main AS file, he has an event listener for enter frame going on here that manages the spinning of all the Ferris wheels. So in the main document class, there's an enter frame that's initiated that loops through all of the arrays, all the Ferris wheels that we have, and based on their is rotating property, whether it's true or false, it will then tell that Ferris wheel to call its own rotate arms method. So if we go to ferriswheel.as that he created, we have a public function called rotate arms, which then calls a private function called rotate. And rotate will go through all the arms in a given Ferris wheel and tell that arm to rotate. Okay? So again, the main difference here is that the enter frame lives in the document class, and this enter frame again loops through all of the Ferris wheels, and based on their is rotating property decides whether or not its rotate arms should be called. So in this example here, if I wanted to stop a particular Ferris wheel, I would write something like this, where I would look inside the Ferris wheels array, find a Ferris wheel with a certain index, set its is rotating to false, which would then not trigger its rotate arms function the next time that enter frame handler was run. So in contrast, my way looked something like this: Ferris wheel 1.stop. So that's the difference. So it's up to you. Choose the way you like. If you think you have a better idea for approaching this, definitely create some files, post them, and let us look at them. It's one thing to say, this way sucks, this way is okay. But if you have something better, you know what? Build it and let us see. All right? We would really love to learn from you. Again, the main purpose of this exercise was to see how we could take the logic and functionality of an object, store it in a separate AS file, and be able to use it multiple times in an application. And I think that both ways handle that really quite well. So I'm going to give you all these files to download and explore. Have fun with them. And again, I'll look forward to your comments and your contributions. So keep up the great work, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.